not going to be as impactful as it might seem initially on the headline when you read it, because the USMCA and goods traded through USMCA trade deal are actually exempt.
You walk into a grocery store in Vancouver and notice the shelves, once filled with U.S. produce, are now empty, replaced with signs reading 100% Canadian. This is no longer just about politics at the negotiating table. What's behind Canada's turn away from the U.S.? And how might it show up in your own spending? Amid rising trade tensions, 85% of Canadians have shifted toward buying domestic goods. Major grocery chains like Walmart Canada, Loblaw, Metro, and Sobeys are cutting back on U.S. imports and proudly displaying Made in Canada banners. In British Columbia, some stores have gone over 115 days without stocking U.S. produce. For Americans, this means exports to Canada from farm products to household goods are losing shelf space. If a store once sold 100 boxes of U.S. corn per week, that number might now be closer to 15. That drop directly affects revenue and may lead producers to scale back or search for new markets. Flight data from OAG shows bookings from Canada to the U.S. between March and September 2025 have dropped by 71 to 76% compared to last year. Airlines like WestJet and Air Canada report that cancellations for U.S.-bound flights have risen by as much as 25%. A survey by Angus Reid Institute shows that nearly 48% of Canadians have canceled or plan to cancel trips to the U.S. For Americans, this could mean fewer visitors in popular destinations like Florida, New York, or Niagara Falls. If hotel rooms in Florida typically cost $150 per night, you may now find deals at $120 as businesses try to fill empty beds. Still, hotel staff, tour guides, and shuttle drivers may face reduced hours or job cuts due to the sharp decline in international guests. Over the past year, Canada's export share to the U.S. dropped from 78% to 68%. As of May 2025, a loss of about 7.7 billion Canadian dollars. Although exports to other countries rose by 42%, it has not fully made up the difference. This marks a strong shift in Canada's global business strategy. Many Canadian companies, especially manufacturers, are pivoting toward Asia and Europe. Gold exports to the UK have increased by 473%, and new trade relationships are expanding into Indonesia, Japan, and Australia. Prime Minister Mark Carney is also advancing free trade talks with ASEAN, Mercosur, China, and the EU to diversify export markets. Some Canadian products are becoming harder to find or slightly more expensive in the US. If you previously bought Canadian maple syrup or specialty cheese for $10, you may now pay $11 to $12 due to tighter supply and shifting distribution. To support these changes, the Canadian government has rolled out a 6.5 billion Canadian dollars, about 4.8 billion US dollars financial package to help exporters absorb US tariffs and avoid job losses. So even if you regularly bought Canadian goods or relied on Canadian ingredients, their workers and farmers are now more likely to stay employed, helping avoid supply chain disruptions that could eventually raise U.S. consumer prices.
We will only sign a deal that's the right deal, that's a good deal for Canada. We're representing Canada, we're standing up for Canada.
In just a few months, a new trade corridor has emerged across North America just south of the border. Washington isn't at the center, while Canada and Mexico quietly cooperate. Trump tightens tariffs and supply chains linked to the begin to fall apart. Inflation rises, factories pause, and Wall Street gets jittery over lost tax revenue. Will American consumers pay hundreds more because of a political misstep? As the threatened steep tariffs from August 1st, Canada and Mexico resisted confrontation. They chose strategic retreat. On July 10th, both countries announced plans to boost trade in agriculture and rare minerals with a clear goal: reduce dependency on the in Q2 2025 alone. Trade between them reached $13.4 billion, up 21% year over year, the biggest rise since 2019. The impact showed fast. Canadian border crossings into the dropped 33% in June 2025, Bureau of Transportation statistics. Border towns like Plattsburgh, New York, and Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, once buoyed by Canadian weekend shoppers, now face steep decline. A Vermont gas station saw sales plunge over 25%, forcing staff cuts. At Target in Buffalo, stock of items popular with Canadians like big packs of Pampers, vitamins, or laundry detergent is piling up. Pampers Size 5 sold 80 to 100 packs weekly. Now it's fewer than 40. Staff dropped prices from $31.99 to $28.50 to try and boost sales. In response to Mexico tariff tensions, Canada and Mexico created the $120 billion Northern Corridor, a trade route that avoids soil entirely. It includes ports in British Columbia, rail links crossing into Mexico, and a closed-loop logistics system bypassing customs. Analysts at the North American Finance Institute estimate that could lose up to $69 billion in direct tax revenue over 5 years if the corridor operates fully, and an additional $17 billion in logistics and port fees. Another $39 billion in jobs tied to transport, ports, and trade could vanish from southern and midwestern states that depend heavily on Mexico trade. A Texas logistics company reports an 18% drop in Mexico-bound orders to the Northeast in July 2025. Goods like avocados, tomatoes, and small electronics that once shipped through Laredo or El Paso now route via Vancouver or Veracruz, then Halifax before heading back into North America. If you used to buy Mexican avocado at Whole Foods for $1.50, prepare to pay $1.85 to $2. Small businesses relying on Mexican imports are raising prices. In Ohio, Taqueria raised its taco price from $8 to $9.50. And traffic dropped nearly 20% in early July. Canada-Mexico trade restructuring is jarring American supply chains. In June 2025, inflation jumped from 2.4% to 2.7%, its steepest rise this year, in part from rising import and delivery costs. Ford factories in Louisville and Ohio paused production due to shortages of rare earth magnets and sensors previously sourced quickly from Mexico. As a result, a 2025 Ford F-150 pickup now costs $1,600 to $1,800 more than planned, even without upgrades. It's not remote. A home air conditioner that cost $450 now lists at $520. Appliance retailers in Florida and Illinois report 15% sales drops because imported goods cost more and replacements are scarce.
So this whole Greenland thing is getting kind of out of hand.
When the president on Twitter declared that he would not travel to Denmark in 10 days' time. The reason? Danish leaders wouldn't discuss selling Greenland to the U.S.
It might look like a frozen, faraway land, but Greenland is quietly giving the White House a major headache. President Trump was busy issuing tariff ultimatums. Canada and the European Union stepped into this icy territory not to sightsee, but to mine gold, molybdenum, and rare earth minerals. And believe it or not, those materials are hiding in the phone in your pocket or inside the engines of American airplanes. So what's really going on up in the Arctic, and how can one remote mine in Greenland make Washington break a sweat? Greenland, once offered to be bought by the Trump administration, has now become a hotspot in the global race for minerals. But the U.S. isn't leading this time. In June 2025, Greenland granted a 30-year mining license to Greenland Resources Incorporated, a Canadian company backed by the EU. The Malmbjerg project is expected to supply around 25% of the European Union's molybdenum, needs a metal essential for producing heat-resistant steel. That's not all. Another Canadian company, Amaroq Minerals Limited, which is listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange, raised £45 million in 2025 to expand the Nalunaq Gold Project and develop a new mining hub in Western Greenland. All this means the U.S. is slowly being shut out of supply chains for key resources like rare earth elements, molybdenum, and titanium materials it once led the search for. Greenland holds 25 out of 34 critical minerals identified by the EU, and this new direction could reshape how the global market works. Losing first access to Greenland's mineral reserves may cause the cost of technology and defense equipment to go up in the future. For example, if a chip made with molybdenum gets 15% more expensive, then an electric vehicle or military device could cost an extra $200 to $500 just because of raw materials. Greenland isn't chasing short-term profit. Instead, it's setting a long-term roadmap for how its resources get used. Under new government rules, Foreign companies must hire local Greenlandic workers and invest directly in community projects like schools, hospitals, roads, and environmental safeguards. That means more of the wealth from Greenland's ground stays within the country rather than getting shipped overseas without any local benefits. As Greenland's Prime Minister said, "We're not selling resources, we're building a future." That's one reason why Greenland is leaning toward partners like Canada and the EU, who are ready to follow these sustainability standards and provide long-term support instead of just looking for quick profits. Because of these stricter requirements, American companies used to a buy mine exit model will need to adjust if they want to compete. That could slow the US down in building a new clean energy supply chain. In the meantime, products like electric car batteries, wind turbines, and energy storage devices could keep seeing high prices for the next 12 to 18 months. Greenland's pivot toward Europe and Canada isn't just symbolic, it's changing the balance of power in the global resource game. With European and Canadian firms gaining control of key mining projects in Greenland like those for molybdenum, gold, and rare earths, the US could find itself locked out of supply lines it once hoped to lead. Take the Malmbjerg project. For instance, it has the green light to operate through 2055 and is set to provide a quarter of the EU's molybdenum needs. That metal is vital for defense, aerospace, and high-strength alloy manufacturing. The US once looked to Greenland as a key partner to reduce its dependence on China, but now, companies like GE, Raytheon, and Tesla may have to source materials from harder to reach places like Brazil or Namibia, where costs and political risks are both higher. You won't feel the impact overnight, but signs are already there. A solar panel that cost $230 earlier this year is now listed at $260 at big retailers like Home Depot, largely because raw material prices are going up. And unless the US finds a new path, that price gap is likely to keep growing.
The deal that's currently being negotiated will provide some relief. But in the meantime, what this does is it also ensures that Canada doesn't become a dumping ground for other markets who are also being pushed out of the United States right now.
This wasn't how the trade war was supposed to play out. Just weeks after Washington imposed a 50% tariff on imported steel, Canada slashed its steel exports to the US from 78% down to 68%, redirecting $1 billion Canadian to bolster its own infrastructure and defense. The era of industrial self-reliance has begun, and Detroit is already feeling the heat. You run a small parts shop in Detroit where steel from Canada arrives weekly. After the US imposes a 50% tariff on Canadian steel, shipments slow. Canada cuts steel sent south exports to US drop from 78% to 68% using steel instead for highways, power lines, and defense. The Canadian government invests $1 billion Canadian to favor local steel for big projects. This hits beyond car factories. New car models are delayed. Used car prices rise and buyers hesitate. Assembly line workers, mostly in their 40s and 50s, face cut hours or pink slips. In 3 months, the price of a sedan may rise by $1,500 to $2,000 per vehicle. Trucks and SUVs by $2,500 to $3,000. About 7,000 to 9,000 auto jobs in Detroit and Ohio could be cut or moved to temporary contracts, tightening family budgets. If you have relatives in Canadian steel industry, you've heard the buzz. Our clean steel sells in Europe and Japan, thanks to big investments in electric arc furnaces and low-emission tech. Canadian steel meets strict EU standards, dodging new carbon taxes, slowing others. Meanwhile, US still struggles to reach lower emission targets. American families aren't just seeing a steel shortage. They feel the pinch as prices rise for home projects and repairs. That garage upgrade, new roof, or fence now shocks with high prices. Many delay home improvements, hoping prices drop. In next 3 to 6 months, price of construction steel at US suppliers will rise by $180 to $250 per ton. This means household projects, roof fixes, fences, garages could cost $1,200 to $2,000 more than months ago. Middle-aged families will postpone big repairs or borrow more to do them. A Detroit dealer said, It has never been this hard to stock new cars. Ford and Stellantis report big rises in production costs from steel shortages and delays. Ohio and Michigan factories cut shifts, delay new models as workers fear job loss. Families with auto paychecks tighten belts, worry about pay cuts, lost overtime, or part-time work. Car upgrades or buying for college kids are on hold. Budgets focus on essentials tuition. Over next 4 to 5 months, average new car price will rise by $1,800 to $2,400 from last year. About 4,000 to 6,000 auto workers in Ohio and Michigan may face fewer hours of layoffs. Typical households need extra $7,120 monthly for repairs and loans. No loud protests, just quiet change. Canada will export steel only to U.S. after domestic needs, especially government defense. It is legal. But U.S. makers seek alternatives as steel supply tightens daily. Washington cannot retaliate, supply chains feel the squeeze. Anyone in U.S. planning build, renovate, invest must pause steel projects. Homes, commercial, delayed, or cost more. Small business owners, contractors, rethink budgets, timelines careers. Within 6 months, average price new homes in industrial regions may rise by $12,000 to $18,000 due to material costs. Families planning renovations will spend extra $2,500 to $4,000 on steel projects like stairs, roofs, fencing. Many delay work or live with repairs undone.
They want to break us so they can own us.
Normalization of tariffs will have, I guarantee you, an impact on the Canadian economy. It will have an impact on jobs.
You might still be buying your usual canned beans or cooking oil each week, but within days, their prices could be anything but familiar. A decision from Washington, set to take effect on August 1st, is quietly setting off a price ripple that could hit every American dinner table. Starting August 1st, the U.S. will apply a 35% import tax on nearly all goods from Canada, from food and raw materials to industrial supplies. It's part of a new trade policy aiming to reduce cross-border dependence. But because Canada supplies much of what Americans use every day, this move is likely to shake up businesses and push up prices at the grocery store. Canada currently supplies about 69% of all canola oil used in the U.S. A gallon of canola oil, usually priced at $9, could soon cost $12 or more. For a family that buys 2 gallons a month, that's $6 extra per month or more than $70 a year just for cooking oil. And canned food might also get pricier. Roughly half of the tin plate steel used for canned goods comes from Canada. That means a can of soup currently priced at $3.99 might soon go for $4.79. A noticeable change for those who rely on canned meals for convenience or budget. Breakfast is also in the crosshairs. Canada is a key supplier of oats and grains that go into cereals. Brands like Quaker and Nature's Path have warned about rising costs. A $5.29 cereal box today may climb to $5.99 this fall. An unwelcome jump for families with kids or older folks who count on a quick, easy breakfast. Companies like Kraft Heinz and Goya Foods have already flagged production cost hikes. While there's no need to panic buy, it might be wise to keep an eye on prices, consider switching to US-made brands, buying in bulk, or hunting for store deals. What seems like a distant policy could add $40 to $50 a month to the average household's grocery bill. Small changes that add up. 2. Kitchen staples at risk. 3 key items are likely to see increases: tin plate, canola oil, and breakfast cereals. These are the building blocks of hundreds of everyday products. Tin plate steel is used in soup cans, soda cans, and even pet food containers. When the cost of materials rises, packaging companies adjust prices fast. A $3.99 soup can may become $4.49, or even $4.79. Soon tough news for anyone living alone or on a fixed income. As for canola oil, most of it comes from Canada. With taxes added, prices are expected to climb above $12 per gallon. So, if you buy 2 gallons a month, expect to pay $6 to $8 more in prepared foods that use canola, like salad dressings or sandwich buns. Will also go up. Cereal lovers, take note. Canadian oats are a staple in U.S. breakfast products. While prices haven't jumped yet, higher import costs mean $5.29 cereal boxes might hit $5.99 soon. That's a real pinch for families juggling food costs already. 3, prices will keep climbing. According to Yale Budget Lab, new 2025 tariffs, including the one on Canada, could increase the cost of living by around 2%, adding about $2,700 per year to the average household budget if no spending changes are made. Food costs at home alone are projected to rise by 2.2%, with fresh produce possibly jumping over 5%. So, that $20 basket of vegetables you bought last week could soon cost $21. Families who adjust their shopping habits choosing local over imports might limit the extra spending to around $2,300 per year. Still, for low-income households where food is already a big part of the budget, that's a major stress. The bigger picture, U.S. GDP could fall by 0.8%, and unemployment may rise by 0.4%, meaning about 594,000 jobs lost by year's end. That's not just theory, it's the potential real-world pain for working Americans.
Auto giant Stellantis says it's already feeling the pain of Donald Trump's trade war. The company behind brands like Jeep, Dodge, Fiat, and Chrysler announced today that it expects to lose nearly $3 billion.
It's a double whammy. Washington holds tight on tariff policy, while Ottawa quietly squeezes supply chains. In the unseen battle between Trump and Carney, American citizens and businesses are taking the full impact. Auto prices are skyrocketing faster than copper, and factory owners in Detroit are racing the clock to avoid production cuts. Is the pressure to negotiate strategy backfiring? And if you're planning to buy a new car or renovate your home, it's time to pay close attention to the forces at play behind the political headlines. In 2025, the U.S. auto industry suffered one of its worst supply shocks since the pandemic. Ford projects a loss of up to $1.5 billion in operating profit this year, while Stellantis, parent of Jeep and Chrysler, reported a $2.7 billion loss in just the first half. The root cause: widespread disruption in parts and raw material supply from Canada. The North American Manufacturing Association reports that roughly 50% of aluminum and steel used in U.S. automobiles comes from Canada. Those components often cross the border multiple times for fabrication, welding, and assembly, meaning even minor border delays can paralyze entire production lines. In states like Michigan and Ohio, consumers are noticing longer wait times and surging prices. A midsize SUV that cost $35,000 in January now lists near $42,000 at many showrooms. It's not just cars feeling the pinch. Raw materials are surging across the board. Copper recently hit $5.72 per pound, its highest point since 2011. Aluminum prices have jumped 161% within the first 7 months of 2025, driving production costs up in industries and consumer goods alike. Auto manufacturers warn that if this continues, the average price of a new vehicle could rise by 20 to 25%. Adding around $7,000 per car. Many consumers in industrial states like Illinois and Pennsylvania are delaying vehicle purchases, while companies like Tesla and Rivian raised prices in August. Building materials are also costly on average. A new home now costs $10,900 more, just accounting for steel, aluminum, and lumber. For many U.S. families, home construction plans have been postponed indefinitely. The combination of tariffs and import price increases is hitting American wallets hard. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, real household income could fall by 0.4% if current tariff policies remain through year-end. That small percentage translates to an added $1,300 to $4,900 per year in household spending due to higher import prices. According to Morning Consult surveys, many families are delaying big-ticket purchases like vehicles, electronics, and home renovations. Data from Experian shows personal debt, including credit card balances, is up nearly 7% from last year. Those who once lived hand-to-mouth are turning to credit cards to cover basic needs. A silent, dangerous financial spiral is forming, and credit policies, many experts argue, are accelerating it.
Well,
70% of our hogs are exported. And we lose an export market, it causes disaster in the price. So this is fabulous. It's fabulous.
Everybody will be celebrating tonight, I'm sure. Yeah, wonderful.
Tons of American beef are now sitting in cold storage with no buyers while on supermarket shelves. The price per pound keeps creeping up. So what happened? How did Asia turn its back on U.S. beef in just a few weeks, clearing the way for Canada to step in? And why are American shoppers paying more even as farmers are taking heavy losses? In 2025, American beef is quietly being pushed off the menu across Asia, especially in key markets like Japan and South Korea, which together accounted for nearly 60% of total U.S. beef exports last year. According to the USDA, exports to China and Hong Kong are down a staggering 67.7% year over year. Japan and South Korea have also scaled back orders significantly. In March alone, weekly beef exports to Asia dropped to just over 50 tons, the lowest in years. While the U.S. scrambles, Canada is moving quickly to fill the gap. With a more modern logistics system, upgraded cold storage facilities, and strong source tracking policies, Canadian beef is emerging as a preferred alternative. Campaigns like Raised Without Hormones and No Antibiotics ever line up with increasingly strict standards in Asia, especially in Japan and South Korea, where food safety and transparency are major selling points. For American shoppers, this global shift hits close to home. As international sales dry up, U.S. meat processors face tighter margins and less room to absorb costs. Meanwhile, more Canadian beef is coming into American supermarkets at a higher price. That box of steaks that used to cost $40, it might now be $46 and climbing. Over the past 5 years, Canada has quietly poured hundreds of millions into upgrading its beef supply chain from ranch to retail. Ports like Vancouver and Prince Rupert have been expanded to handle frozen goods more efficiently. Cold storage hubs in Alberta and Saskatchewan now feature precision temperature systems to protect quality during global shipping. Canada Beef, the industry's marketing arm, rolled out a traceability program allowing each cut of meat to be traced back to its farm. Labels like Raised Without Hormones are now common on export packages. This makes it easier for Canadian beef to pass strict import inspections in Japan, South Korea, and Singapore markets that value food safety and hormone-free products. For Asian consumers, that means peace of mind without much extra cost. But for Americans, if this trend continues, it could hit domestic prices hard. One supermarket chain in California that used to buy U.S. beef at $6 per pound is now sourcing from Alberta at $7.20 per pound. That price difference gets passed right to you at checkout. American cattle ranchers are under growing pressure. According to the USDA, U.S. beef exports are projected to drop by nearly 10% in 2025, down to roughly 2.6 to 2.7 billion pounds. Meanwhile, imports are expected to rise 12%, topping 5 billion pounds mainly from Australia, New Zealand, and Brazil, losing long-standing markets like Japan, South Korea. And Vietnam means more unsold product at home, and a glut that drives prices down for farmers even as costs keep rising. Processing plants in Texas, Nebraska, and Kansas have cut back operations. Some have shut down temporarily, with hundreds of workers laid off. According to the American Meat Institute, small and mid-sized farms are losing buyers, forced to scale back or sell cattle early just to stay afloat. At the same time, prices at the grocery store keep rising. Ground beef now averages $6.10 per pound, over 10% more than it did at the start of the year, according to Food & Wine. If you used to spend $30 a week on ground beef, you might now be looking at $33 or $34. And while 2025 beef production is expected to hit 26.7 billion pounds, the breeding supply is falling, and feed costs are climbing. Feeder cattle are now priced at $281 per hundredweight, pushing production costs even higher.